Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Sue Feet here. I'm here today with Charles B. Ticker, estate mediator and litigator. Charles, we've been watching with interest your series on mediation minefields, and I have a question for you today. Why are you doing what you're doing?
I love mediating estate disputes. After doing litigation for decades and in the last several years focusing on estate disputes, uh, I've come to the realization that our judicial system is just not well suited to dealing with these uh, disputes, which are fraught with emotion. They're personal. Judges hate dealing with these cases, and I tell the participants in mediations that the odds are, your case is going to settle. I mean, maybe 5% or maybe less of cases actually make it all the way to a hearing before a judge. So if the odds are you're going to settle at some point, better settle sooner than later before spending all those tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and having a total stranger deal with your dispute. And also the judges will throw all kinds of obstacles along the way to keep people from getting into their courtroom. So they're going to try and get them to come to settlement conferences, judicial mediations. They really don't want to deal with these disputes. That's what I do because I love helping siblings and families put their dispute to bed and move on with their lives and hopefully salvage some relationships if possible, but at least they can salvage their own physical and mental health, because I've had clients come to me, and I mentioned this in my book, Bobby Gets Bupkis, where I've had clients actually say to me that they are physically ill. And one client said she was getting rashes and boils, her hair was falling out, and she says, I've had it. So she settled the case, and maybe her hair came back, hopefully. So that's why I deal with what I deal with.
So Charles, how are sibling estate fights different than other estate fights? And in fact, sibling disputes altogether, are they different than other kinds of disputes?
Well, they are very unique in the sense that the protagonists or the antagonists to the dispute have known each other, one another, all their lives. They've grown up together, and the seeds of these sibling disputes have root in childhood. And I mentioned this in my book, and other well-known authors like psychologist Dr. Jean Safer in her book Cain's Legacy write about how sibling rivalry can give way to sibling disputes, and you see this in the plant kingdom, you see it in the animal kingdom, and you see it in humans. So it's like ingrained in our entrenched in our DNA. I can give an example just from my childhood. I mean, I have a younger sister, Geeta. She's 5 years younger, and I remember when I was 10 and she was around 5, I got really ticked off at her, and I took one of those shoes that I had at the time. You remember those? I think it was a Buster Brown, or these clunky shoes, and I just threw it at her head. Why did I throw a shoe at my sister's head? Well, she was always getting into my stuff, my games and my toys. I was very meticulous, making sure all the game parts stayed together and put everything back in order. And she would get into, let's say, my Monopoly game and start removing pieces. You try to play Monopoly without the little plastic houses. It's very frustrating. So I got so frustrated, I just whipped a shoe at her head, and my dad had to get me this huge 8-foot cabinet with locks and combinations and all that stuff so I could protect my stuff. Anyway, I digress. But why do I tell that story? Because it happened when I was 10 and she was 5, and you figured, it was fortunately, or the shoe didn't hit her, but you think it's something that, everyone would forget about, but, not a chance. Like 20 years later at her wedding, she gets up and she starts telling the shoe story that I had forgotten about, to 200 strangers there that hadn't heard the story. It was a little embarrassing, but the point I'm trying to make is and unfortunately, we get along fine today, but the point I'm trying to make is these experiences that siblings have as children, stay with them. They don't forget about them. So I'll see these estate disputes where a sibling's talking about, a pet that their sibling killed when they were 9 years old. And so they're challenging a parent's will, but they don't want to talk about this incident that happened when they were 9 years old, and that's what's fueling this dispute. So these kinds of disputes are not everyone's cup of tea. Like I said, judges don't really want to deal with all this emotional baggage and get into the history of the family relationship. But to be successful as a mediator in this area, you have to be willing to take the time to listen and identify and empathize with what these people have gone through. And and sometimes that involves talking about what was it like growing up with your sibling, because that's quite often will give you a clue to perhaps finding a way to settle the dispute. Because although they're adults, they never stop being siblings and they never stop being children. So that's what's unique about these disputes. That's why I'm passionate about doing this kind of work, because I feel I can really bring some value to the process and hopefully get the people to settle and move on with their lives.
Well, thank you very much. Our guest today has been Charles B. Ticker. Thank you for sharing, estate mediator and litigator. Thank you, Charles, for sharing why you do what you do.
My pleasure.